Hey everybody, this is TotalGamerJunkie. I want to welcome you all back to my channel. So in this video, I want to go over 10 changes that I believe could make Life is Strange Double Exposure a better game. Now, obviously the core issue of Double Exposure is the inconsistency with the writing and how the plot just went absolutely nowhere towards the very end. So I figured to be honest, I'm thinking of writing my own version of Double Exposure and changing a lot of stuff. So this video is really just what I want to do when writing a fanfic, because I typically write original stuff. I have to keep to myself, I have to practice my writing, and I figured this would be a good challenge for me, and perhaps I'll post it online and let you all judge it for yourself. You tell me if it's good or not. Of course, it will take a while to write and finish it, because I want to be very focused on it to make sure that I don't end up doing what Deck 9 did and create a story with just plot holes. So I'm going to discuss 10 changes I plan to make in my own version of the story, so it makes it a lot better, in my opinion at least, and I'd like your thoughts on it. So let's start with the first change. Max Caulfield is not the main character. Now, Max not being the main character doesn't mean she'll play a big role in this story I'm writing. She's actually going to, which is what the second change is. But I feel that having a new protagonist would be a lot better, because we know that, and it's actually disappointing, we know that Max teaches at Colden University, yet we never see her do any of that. So that's something I want to focus on in my version of Double Exposure, where the main character, Zach, like Max, he's going to get the ability to shift between timelines, but he's also one of her students. So it'd be like if you, well, of course you played Life is Strange 1 and 2 if you're watching this video. When Max attends Jefferson's classes, it'd be a lot like that in what I'm writing. So having Max be Zach's teacher in this, I think works well, because in the story I'm writing, she is going to discover he has powers. So when she's going to stop teaching him and start mentoring him as the story progresses, because she knows how dangerous these powers are and what they can do. And I think would be interesting to set up this dynamic where she's trying to tell him, you have to be very careful, don't abuse this power, like it's going to end badly if you do, or if you've already done it. Now, as Deck 9 clearly doesn't like Max and Chloe's relationship, which is why they did a poor job of why Max and Chloe broke up, I decided that I'd have that timeline, the Bay timeline, be the canon one for this story. And in this story, Max and Chloe are married, so there'll be a slight change in dialogue where Max is referred to as Mrs. Price instead of Miss Caulfield. And speaking of Max, that brings me to the second change, which is probably the biggest one for this story, which is Max Caulfield is the murder victim. Now, you may not agree with me, but I believe having Max Caulfield be the murder victim would be great for this story, because we all know from Life is Strange 1, we all played as Max. We know who she is, we know the type of person she is, we listened to her thoughts, read her texts and journal entries. We played a game where we had to make a difficult choice at the very end with her, so having her be killed off and figuring out who murdered her would be a compelling twist. Now, I do have an idea of who the killer is, but I don't want to get too much into it, as maybe I might change my mind, but I still got to write this all out, so if anything changes, that's why I don't want to say anything now, in case something changes. Now, the third change in this story is how Chloe will play a role in this story. Now, originally I was going to write out, because I do got like a little wall, I got some notes up on how I want to plan this story out. I was going to have Max and Chloe in one timeline, the alive timeline, and then just have Chloe in the dead timeline. But I decided to change that, so when I'm writing this out, Chloe is actually visiting David. So in the alive timeline, she won't ever show up, but in the timeline where Max is dead, she ends up coming to Calderon and she wants to know what happened and figure out who killed Max and why. And in the story, the main character, Zach, will be working with Chloe from time to time, figuring out who'd want to kill Max and why. So, in this story, I know it may seem sucky, after what I just said previously about respecting Max and Chloe's relationship, but having them be in the story, but across different timelines, I think would really help. Especially if we know that in Double Exposure, Max can carry stuff across different timelines. So perhaps Max can, in the story, write Chloe a letter, and Zach can deliver it to Chloe in the dead timeline. Now, these next 3 changes involve Loretta, starting with she will be helping the main character in the dead timeline with the murder investigation. Now, I do think Loretta was, she was meant to, at least the way I interpreted it in the trailers, it looked like she was going to be a snoop, similar to, if you remember Max and Chloe, when they were snooping around trying to figure out what happened to Kate, where's Rachel Amber, and they had that investigation board in Chloe's room. I honestly thought Loretta would be like that, but we were wrong. She was underutilized. So in this story, she's going to play a more important role in helping. She'll be one of the key characters that will help you figure out, will help Zach figure out who murdered Max and why. Now, the second change I did with Loretta was make her romance for Zach. Now, in order to do this, I had to get rid of Reggie because she has a thing for Reggie, who also, in my opinion, doesn't really contribute much to Double Exposure's story, so that's why I decided to get rid of him. And having Loretta and Zach end up together is very important. Not end up together, but have this relationship blossom between the two of them. It's very important for the story because with the next change with Loretta, as well as the ending of the story, I do plan to write out 2 endings because I know how it's going to end. But I felt it was very important for this to happen because the next change I did with Loretta was in the timeline where Max is alive, she's dead. So what happens is, we know that Loretta does her true crime podcast, and in my mind, I think she takes some time to leave campus because she's investigating something for her podcast. And, this could be cliche or whatever, not very creative, but like William, she ends up in a car crash and dies. But when Max dies, she actually didn't decide to take off time for Colon. She stayed to pay her respects to Max. So if Max is alive, Loretta's dead in that timeline. If Max is dead, Loretta is alive in that timeline. And I thought it'd be pretty interesting to see how people's reactions are, because we play Double Exposure, you see how the environment and people, how the environment and the people are completely different with when Sophie's alive or dead. So I thought that having this for the story would also be a cool thing to do, seeing, okay, what's the difference between Max and Loretta's death? How does that affect people in this? How does it affect the friendships, and what would the teacher's reactions be? Sophie is not the shapeshifter. Now, I didn't make her the shapeshifter because I felt Sophie's reasoning, especially how she got her powers and the reason that she turns evil, I thought that was pretty stupid. So I decided, nah, let's not make Sophie the villain here. Let's make her have problems with her mother, but no, we're not gonna make her the shapeshifter here. Which brings me to the killer. Now, I'm not gonna say who it is, but the killer has a connection to Life is Strange 1, and she has a reason for, well, I should say he, but I'm actually still writing that out. I don't know who it might be. I'm still deciding on the gender and whatnot. But whoever it is, I'm going to make them have a reason for killing Max. And what's interesting with this person is going to frame Chloe. So this person, because they're pretty sick, what they're going to do is when they kill Max, they're gonna take a selfie, but disguised as Chloe in the story, and then this is what's gonna happen. If you remember the reveal at the end of episode 2, we see Max's Sophie took a photo of Max shooting her. So this would be, the main character would see this photo of Chloe, and that would be like, he'd be thinking, or he wouldn't be thinking, he'd be saying to her like, "You're a fucking psychopath, how could you do that?" And then in my mind the story would be, he shifts to the timeline where Max is alive, but Max is in the dark room when he does it, and that's how she learns he has powers. But, and you know, it may be a bit stupid, but you know, I figured that's a good way to show how psychotic the killer is. Now, each timeline, this is one of the disappointing things, something I want to focus on as well. Each timeline will have its own disaster happening in the different timelines, because what was pretty cool was, I don't know if any of you noticed it, but when Sophie goes schizo and is taking control of everyone towards the end of episode 4, if you switch to the timeline where she's dead, it doesn't happen at all. Everyone's just fine. And then when you switch to the alive timeline, you see the storm happening and everything, which makes absolutely no sense. Now, I'm still trying to work out what the disasters are. Like, I know for one of them, it's going to be, if you remember, Detective Alderman sees his past self and he touches him and is erased from reality. That's going to happen in one of the timelines. That will be one of the disasters. I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do for the other disaster. But in order to end that, Zach's going to have to make a choice, which brings us to the last one. Now, just like in the first Life is Strange, there's going to be a choice where Zach will, in order to stop the disasters happening across both timelines, he's going to have to destroy one timeline. So, and with the way I'm writing the story, you know, you can have Max be alive, okay, but then that means Loretta's dead. And if he wants Loretta to live, then he's going to have to destroy the timeline where Max is alive. And as I said before, as I'm writing the story, I plan for Zach and Loretta to slowly develop feelings for each other and get together, and I thought that'd be interesting for the story to see that play out. Like, he's done everything he's gone through to figure out who murdered Max and why that is. Can he go through with it? After all the hard work he's done, can he kill off Max to save Loretta, or vice versa? But anyways, that's really all I wanted to talk about. I'm open to criticism, you know. If there's one thing I like, it's brutal honesty. If you think this is interesting, let me know. If you think it's shit, also let me know. I prefer brutal honesty. Otherwise, how am I going to learn and be better at writing? But I do hope you all enjoyed this video, and see you in the next one. This is TotalGamerJunkie, signing off.